Yeah, I'm running out of gas. Where are we going now?
Oh, sorry. Why don't we open it to question and answer? Why don't we...
It's too complicated.
Okay. So, question and answer from the audience. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to say that I will repeat every question just so that we have it in the mic. So I know that might slow things down, but we have to. It was really the first person, so let me give it to you.
So the question authority not make it into that commercial?
So did question authority not make it into the commercial?
Question authority, I put it in some other commercial. and it was one that was like dear to me. So there are different versions of like question your parents, like when the commercial was appropriate for that.
Can you tell us which commercial it was?
Can you tell us which commercial it was?
You know, I almost put a reel with 35 commercials in it in a gallery exhibition about 20 some years ago, and I put this reel together. So somewhere at Mutado, there's a reel with 35 commercials on, but it's on 3/4 tape. I still have some of those old machines around, but if you want to come over and watch them all, you can.
I'm sure let's have some takers. You have a question over here?
Yeah, one of the things I really appreciate is you guys have gone through like the Zero archive and released demos and unreleased tracks. The music that you create that doesn't make its way onto film or commercial, will that ever see the light of day? Is there any chance of that?
So the music that you made...
I know,
I know that.
Right. Probably not. I mean, some of it will, but it will have that. And the reason is because as good a job as I've done of keeping these images in red binders and being organized with them, with music, I'm terrible. Even when I score a film, it's like I have to have an assistant that's trying to like keep up with I'm filing things in the wrong places, I'm getting an idea to write a cue, and then I realize that it's in a folder, or I don't even realize it, he finally figures it out that it's in a folder for a Wes Anderson movie from 20 years ago or something, you know, and then pulls it out, and it's all, and the guy who should have been my archivist was my engineer Bob Casale, and he kind of had a lot to do with what some of the projects I worked on sounded like, but a lot of them did. Like he contributed to like the sound of Rugrats just by the way he mixed, and the Wes Anderson films, the scores sound like they do because of the way he worked on them. And about 10 years ago, he freaked the crap out of me because I was looking for a cue for something, and I went into my archives, and I'm looking, and I go, there's 150 cues here, all called Reel 1, Music Cue 1. There's 170 cues here called Reel 1, Music Cue 2. And I'm like, they didn't have a name after, they didn't have a project assigned to it. And he said, Mark, we were working so fast, I didn't have time to archive all those things. I was like, oh. So, no. You'll probably never hear it. They'll probably just remain on the 24 computers and about 10 dozen hard drives that are down in the basement of Mutado until it floods, like the next time the water main breaks on Sunset, it'll probably come right down and go right in there and kill them all. It'll probably be, you know, there's a room at a storage place with about 350 or more reel-to-reel tapes of Devo songs that I don't even remember what they sound like, but they say things like Devo sails down the Nile. And I don't even know what that sounds like. I don't remember. I remember writing that on there, and I drew pictures on every single one of those boxes. Myopia jam, and it might have had lyrics to it, but I don't remember. You can come over and go through those if you want.
What were your feelings when production responsibility shifted from David Bowie to Brian Eno on your first album?
What were your feelings when production responsibilities shifted from David Bowie to Brian Eno on your first album? Thank you.
You know, I didn't know what a producer was in the first place. And we had done an interview, we were in Manhattan, and when Devo first started, it was kind of interesting, because we were in Ohio for a long time, festering and writing songs and developing our own slang. We referred to each other as spuds. And the word Devo could be high Devo, which was a compliment, or low Devo, man, you were a sub, you idiot. You were one of the guys that came up and got in a fist fight with us when they were angry because we were playing Mongoloid instead of a Foghat song. And you know, it's like we by the time we started playing in CBGB's and Max's Kansas City in New York, and then came out here and played Starwood, and went up to Mambo Hay Gardens, and by the time we did that, we had these outfits, and we were so determined not to look like a rock band. We had these. Jerry worked for a custodial supply shop, and I was an apartment building manager at a day job, and so we had these catalogs of like janitorial supplies. I remember going through and going, if I ever own a house, I'm going to get one of these crazy sinks that they use to wash tires in. And they were so cool. They had some weird device that would lower, something down on a chain. And I thought, that's the way I would buy things for. And but we found these yellow cleanup, like hazardous waste cleanup suits, these yellow suits, and they were like $4 a piece. So we could get 5 of those for $20. Stencil Devo right here, and it looked pretty good. We looked like a team, we looked like some sort of we looked like janitors, but
What about David Bowie and Brian Eno?
Oh, David Bowie and Brian Eno. Yeah. So we get to New York.
That's the one person.
We get to New York, and because we were art students, I knew that you could go to a blueprint place, and you could, if you had a codeless positive, you could make, instead of everybody else making all these 8.5 by 11 inch flyers, I found that I could go to a blueprint shop, and I could print up like 4 foot by 3 foot posters, for like 50 cents or 40 cents. And so we'd print up a bunch of those posters that would say Devo at Max's Kansas City tonight, and we'd have some picture of the 5 of us in our janitorial outfits at the rubber museum at Goodyear in downtown Akron. And it did not look like a rock band. And so we put these posters up all over, Manhattan, the day before we played, and we showed films. So there was no MTV, and there was no place to show this stuff. So before we came out, we'd have these films we made, and we'd hang a sheet, and we would rent, every weekend that we were playing shows, we would go to the library in Akron, and we'd say, we'd like to take out the 16 millimeter projector for the weekend, and they go, Ma, you love that projector. So we take the projector and put it in the truck, and we'd drive to New York, and set it on the table, and we'd show the film, and then, people would go, that's the damnedest thing, that band, they show a film of them playing 2 songs, and then they come out and play those songs. So it was like, it was weird enough, and it was interesting, different enough from, and if you were going to Max's Kansas City and CBGB's, you were watching Talking Heads, like in their primordial stage, you were watching really cool bands like Suicide, or you'd see all these different Television or Blondie and the Ramones, and you'd see them changing, working out their thing and turning into whatever they were going to turn into. But Devo just showed up and like bam, and after our first show, every show we played, was
Almost got to David Bowie.
Yeah, we're all.
Okay, so getting back to David Bowie in a second.
Sure.
So all of a sudden, the way these places work, like CBGBs and Max's, they would, sorry guys, the little guys can't believe they're here. They thought we were going to talk about Yo Gabba Gabba. Sorry. You get to Max's Kansas City, and they say, you have all of the Rolling Stones, Dennis Hopper, they go through a whole list of people that were on our guest list. Tonight you have Frank Zappa and his bands, and we go, don't put him on. We played him our demo in 1976 in LA, and he said, did you say this band is in a basement? And we said yes, and he goes, good, that's where they belong. so I wouldn't let him put Frank Zappa's band on. But it'd be, everybody was kind of interested. All the artists, Andy Warhol would bring a bunch of people with him, and there'd be actors, and so then at the end of the night we go to they go, well, we subtract $5 for every guest on your list, so your $200 you were going to get paid is now $10 or something. And they'd give us just enough money to drive to buy gas to get back to Akron. But in some article, they said, who would you like to have produce your record? And I was like, well, David Bowie or Brian Eno. Because I love both of their music. And Brian Eno, to me, had done one of the most important keyboard solos ever. Because I had been working on I didn't know who Sun Ra was yet, but I was working on trying to defeat the keyboard part of my synth. I wanted it to sound more like blob noises and explosions and ray guns and V2 rockets, and try to get away from Rick Wakeman kind of fancy organ sounding, silly synth sounds. And I remember on the first Roxy Music album, there was a song that was called, I think it was called Editions of You. And it wasn't really that great a song. It was kind of a throwaway song. But in the middle, he played this synth solo that went, wow, 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 and it just made the hair on my arm stand, because I went, he's not using a keyboard. And it was true. I found out later when I met him that he had this synthesizer from London called an EMS, and it was like a suitcase or ridiculously cool synth that had a joystick. And so he played the solo on a joystick, and it was like the best. So anyhow, so those were the two guys we picked, and so we were playing 2 weeks in a row. The first week, David Bowie came and said, he saw the show, he watched, you do 2 sets when you play Max in Kansas City. So we played the set, and then Suicide came on and played a set, and then we played another set, and so he came backstage after our first set, David Bowie, and he had short hair, and he was like the way kids look now, kind of, because he had blue jeans with the cuffs rolled up and a checkered shirt or something, and I'm just looking at him, and it didn't matter what he was wearing. I was just seeing him at the Cleveland Auditorium dressed as Ziggy Stardust and doing that show that was so incredible. And he's going, I'd like to produce you guys. I'm going to be in Germany what did he say? No, he said, I'd like to produce you guys. I think you guys are great. So we're like, okay. So he came out on stage for our second set, and he introduced me. He said, this is the band of the future. I'm going to produce them in Tokyo this winter. And we're like going, well, we're sleeping in a Kanawai tonight. So we hung out with him for a while. I had nowhere to stay, so he let me stay at his hotel room with him. And we'd go out places, like he'd go to see Mum and Shams or something, and somebody would see him on the way, in, and he'd be sneaking in, and by the time we came out, there'd be a whole crowd, and he had a what do you call those guys? It was like a bodyguard, just a big guy that, to keep people away. And I just remember getting in the back of the car, and he'd sit down and go like this, pull his hat down, and I'd be sitting next to the window going, it's bad.